As a designer, I'm kind of responsible for determining what the game actually is, what the player is actually doing, how they're given the information, conveying what they're supposed to be doing, and determining the controls, mechanics, everything like that. So if you go on to the next one. First of all, I'd like to talk a bit why I feel games are important, and gaming has exploded over the past 20 years or so. So if we just look at the number of UK gamers, there's over 33 million regular gamers in the UK, so those are people who actually say, yes, I play digital games on a regular basis. And because of that, last year nearly £2 billion was spent just on games, which means that it's overtaken video and music as the biggest home entertainment sector. And the thing with games now is it's not just the games, it's the tie-in novels, the toys, everything around it, which if you take into account that spending as well, it's over £3 billion with assorted merchandise, and that's just in the UK. So in popular culture, gaming is also gaining quite a big foothold. So you've got films that are based on games like Tomb Raider and Resident Evil, which I believe the 6th one, oh lovely, thank you. So, yes, the 6th Resident Evil film will be coming out next year. I didn't say there were good films, please don't. But there are also games that are films that are based on gaming culture and gaming themes. So there's Tron, and then most recently Wreck-It Ralph, the big Pixar film. And if you look at that screenshot, which is possibly a bit too small, but you've got characters from Mario in there, you've got characters from Sonic, from Street Fighter, from Mortal Kombat. So it's something that is seeping into everywhere. So that's kind of shown how gaming is becoming a big part of digital culture. But it's also to consider how important it is for individuals. So on a base level, it just provides entertainment. It's a way of passing the time, but it's interactive, it's interesting, and it's very fast moving. You know, you look at games from 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, and at the time I remember Soul Edge coming out and just thinking, my God, how can graphics get any better than this? And then the PlayStation 2 came out, and it was like, and with each generation, things get more and more advanced. But it's not just that, there's also escapism. I can say with a fairly reasonable amount of confidence that I'm never going to be a very successful, powerful wizard. Gaming allows people to explore fantasy worlds, roles that they wouldn't normally in real life be able to take. And for me, I think that is also very important. I think what makes humans sort of really interesting is our ability to play. You know, as kids, it just comes naturally, and then as we get older, we find new ways, whether it's golf or video gaming or mountain biking. But then there's also socialising. So with the advent of the internet, gaming is becoming more social, and there are entire communities built around games. So, for example, I'm in a World of Warcraft guild, and I have friends in Sweden now, in Denmark. I've been to their weddings, I've met their newborn children, and it's just amazing because without gaming, I would never have met these people. I wouldn't know them, and getting the perspectives from all these different people is absolutely, it's just invaluable, and I don't think that any people should be excluded from that. I believe that there should be at least one game that people can play. So, I think Brad touched on this briefly, but one of the things with accessibility in games development and why it's a bit behind other media is because people just haven't considered it. It's kind of the same reason why a lot of the protagonists in games are white men, because a lot of developers are white men, and there is a tendency to kind of just stick to what you know. So for me, my interest first started with the attractive small boy on the left next to his more attractive, smarter, cleverer sister. Yes, that is my brother, and as a child, he wasn't very good at games. He was actually quite appalling, and being regularly defeated by his sister, who was 4 years younger, was quite embarrassing for him, and led to a lot of those being broken, which did have the beneficial side effect that I got really good with the soldering iron. But it wasn't until he was 13 we found out that he is severely colourblind. He's fully deuteranopic, so he's fully green colourblind, but we also think he's partially trinomalous, so he's blue-yellow colourblind as well. And it's odd because that's obviously such a mild disability to the point where a lot of people, if you said to a colourblind person, do you consider yourself disabled, they'd go, well, no. But it stops him from playing quite a lot of games even now. So he really likes his online shooters, but he can't play any of the ones that use red-green for the team tags. So he got Modern Warfare 2, and he was faced with the decision, shoot first and ask questions later, and hope that he hadn't just shot one of his teammates, or hesitate and watch as he just got repeatedly killed. And I'd say the game lasted about a week, and what he plays instead is the Gears of War series, because they've built into the language of their game that the good guys, the COG, have cyan lights on, so they have like very light blue, and all of the bad guys have orange, which are colours that people who are colourblind can actually process. So that was kind of a sort of initial interest, but what really struck me with games being something that could be really, really important was my dad. So towards the end of his life, my dad had a brain tumour, and after his first biopsy, he had quite a few problems with his speech and reading and just general cognitive problems. And the nurse said to us, play word games with him. And my dad had always been a big fan of Scrabble. And it was very hard for me to play it with him because he'd always been so good at it, and now he was really struggling. But within a month, he was beating me again. And this is a game, it wasn't designed as a rehabilitation tool, it was just a game, but it helped him recover faster. And towards the end, when he was stuck in hospital, he'd get very bored, so I took him a PSP with a copy of Wipeout. And Wipeout is a racing game, and although it does have things like, you can fire weapons and it's got a left and right air brake, on the easiest levels you can finish the races just using left and right and just releasing the accelerator to slow down. And because of that, it took his mind off things, and he felt empowered. And it was just things like he hadn't been able to drive for 5 years, and now he could zoom around this fancy landscape in a floating craft. So again, it's just that thing that, games are just so important to everyone for different reasons. So what can developers do? I think Brad stole my thunder a bit on this one. So there are guidelines. There's the gameaccessibilityguidelines.com, and there's also the includification guidelines, which are on ablegamers.com. And it's just a matter of taking into consideration various things. And the really annoying thing is that a lot of the things aren't that hard to implement. They've been done before, but it's just a matter of having the foresight to actually consider it and putting the time aside and just making the case for why it's important, because a lot of accessibility measures, it's not a matter of giving people special favours. It increases player choice for every single person who's playing that game. So button remapping, if someone doesn't like the default controls, they can change it. Doesn't matter if they've got a disability or not, that's something that benefits all players because it gives them choice. And it's the same with subtitles. I always play with subtitles on because I find it easier to figure out what's going on if it's reinforced with text. And just having audio cues backed up with visuals and visuals backed up with audio cues, that's nothing special, that's just good design practice. So one of the things we can do is we can learn from film and TV. So I believe that Channel 4 and the BBC already have their subtitling guidelines and audio description guidelines available online. And just look at what they do. How do they deal with these things? How do they make things work? And of course there's learning from other developers. So Brad mentioned Valve. They are very good. I believe it was when they released the first Half-Life they got into a lot of trouble from the deaf gaming community because there were no subtitles. So what Valve did was they just went, right, we're going to be industry leaders at this. So not only did they develop a really good, solid subtitling system for their games, they also did full closed captioning, which was just amazing. And you can show it to a lot of game artists and they go, oh, but it takes up most of the screen. It's like, well, if it allows people to play the game, who cares? And it's an option. Again, it's something that you can choose to do. Another good game is Bayonetta, which is actually a fairly niche title, quite hardcore, but it has a one-handed mode, and it has a very easy mode, and it means that pretty much anyone can play that game. And it's funny because I'm interested in accessibility. I've finished Bayonetta, and I didn't know those modes existed until fairly recently. So it's not something like, if you put in these modes, the hardcore will be massively upset that you've dumbed down their game. You can have these modes sitting alongside the super hardcore traditional game modes quite easily. And obviously, engaging with gamers with disabilities is another thing. There is no shame in saying to someone, how can we make this game better for you? I mean, we do this with the community at large anyway. And I'd also say to anybody who, if you have a problem playing a game, let the developers know, let the publishers know, because it's one of those things where that pressure does work. In 2008, Ubisoft were releasing titles without, games without subtitles. People complained. They now put subtitles in all of their games. Someone had an epileptic seizure because at the time, I mean, it's still the case that most games don't have to undergo seizure testing like TV or film does. But because somebody experienced this with a Ubisoft title and then they went to Ubisoft said, right, we're now going to have epilepsy testing in as standard for all of our games. So it's one of those things where pressure really does work.
Technology, eh?